On the offensive, UN troops shell rebel positions in eastern DR Congo. Subdued but still defiant, supporters of ousted Egyptian leader Mohamed Morsi continue low-key protests. And peace plea, UN Security Council wants Sudan and South Sudan to peacefully resolve oil row. It is 1 p.m. in East Africa, 6 p.m. in China. This is Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Penina Karibe with these stories also lined up.
I see this as being a relationship that is can mutually help drive the Kenyan economy to prosperity, but also benefit our Chinese partners.
It's a win-win. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta concludes China trip. And threatened heritage, the growing menace of littering tourists at the famed Masai Mara National Reserve. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a special UN brigade formed to neutralize armed groups in the eastern part of the country has taken its first military action, firing artillery at rebels menacing the border city of Goma. The force of Tanzanian, South African and Malawian soldiers are backing the Congolese army against the M23 fighters, whose brief occupation of the city last year damaged the image of the UN mission in Congo and led the Security Council to create the brigade. The United Nations pledged in July to prevent the rebels from getting back within range of the city of about 1 million people on the Rwandan border. But M23 this week entered a security zone ring in Goma that was established by the new robustly mandated intervention brigade earlier this month. At least 3 people were killed on Thursday when shells landed on the city. Clashes then erupted between M23 and the Congolese army early on Friday, with peacekeepers again involved to hold back the rebels. Well, let's now get a brief look back at the genesis of the conflict between the Congolese army and the M23 movement. In April 2012, close to 300 soldiers from the former rebel group, the CNDP, deserted the Congolese army, spreading panic in North Kivu province, calling themselves the M23 movement. October 2012, the UN Security Council accuses Rwanda and Uganda of supplying the M23 with weapons. Both countries denied the allegations. 2012 November, M23 troops briefly entered Goma, the main city in the resources-rich east, then withdrew and promised that the government will release some of their supporters. And then the next year, 2013 February, representatives of 11 African countries signed an accord in Ethiopia, pledging to help end the conflict in DR Congo. The M23 rebel group declared a ceasefire ahead of the talks. In March this year, warlord and alleged M23 founder Bosco Ntaganda surrendered to the U.S. Embassy in Rwanda and was transferred to the International Criminal Court in The Hague to face war crimes charges. Fighting has since been on and off around Goma city. Now to the north of the continent, and thousands of supporters of deposed Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi joined at least 3 marches in different parts of the Egyptian capital on Friday to protest against his ouster. Friday's rallies are being seen as a test for Morsi loyalists and the Muslim Brotherhood organization from which he hails. Elsewhere in the capital, dozens of activists gathered outside the Prosecutor General's office to protest former President Hosni Mubarak's release from prison.
Loyalists of the deposed President Mohamed Morsi had called for 28 marches throughout Cairo, though many appeared sparsely attended. At one in Cairo's southern Mahdi district, several thousand protesters marched from the Al Rayyan Mosque to the Arab Square. They chanted, "Coup, coup, and down with military rule."
I demand the military to leave. Al-Sisi must leave as soon as possible, and Adli Mansour also must leave. He does not have a real position. All of them must leave. We want clean elections that bring a president who fixes the situation.
In Mohadisin district, around 2,000 people gathered, but the march stopped short of an army cordon set up close to a nearby square.
There is hope until Judgment Day. We didn't come out to back Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood. I voted for a president, for a constitution and all that. To what end? They were trampled on and peaceful demonstrators were killed in Rabat. And in the end, we claim that this is done for the good of the people.
Hundreds of supporters of the deposed leader also gathered outside the European External Action Service building, asking the EU's top diplomat not to support the leaders who ousted Morsi.
What we claim that we ask Ms. Ashton to stop dealing with any non-democratically, non-elected government. The voice goes to the people chose some people. Even if the people have decided that this Mohamed Morsi would step down, there is a democratic process, a constitutional democratic process to get him down, which states that the parliament is the one that should withdraw his trust from the president. There is a democratic way of doing it. We Egyptians have voted through the 2.5 years for more than 5 times. These 5 times are now in the garbage.
Elsewhere in the capital, dozens of activists from revolutionary groups opposed to both Morsi and his predecessor Hosni Mubarak gathered to protest against the former president's release from prison.
This is a man that committed many crimes against the Egyptian people during his 30 years of terror. This is a man who left power after killing 850 people during the January uprising.
The Friday rallies are the first since the Brotherhood's spiritual leader and supreme guide Mohamed Badia was arrested and accused of instigating violence. Egyptians are enduring the bloodiest civil unrest of their modern history after the military overthrew Morsi on July the 3rd following demonstrations against his rule. Jinkyo, CCTV.
Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has wrapped up his first state visit to China, during which the two countries agreed to cooperate on several fronts, including economic partnerships, food security and poaching. Kenyatta said his trip was an overall success in strengthening bilateral relations between the two countries.
We have struck a number of agreements. One of the areas that has been critical to us is energy. As you know, for a long time, we have somehow been growing, but not at a pace that is able to meet the kind of demand that we have or the requirement that we would have to become an industrial powerhouse. We have had about 1,600 megawatts of energy. We want to see how we can work with partners to boost that, at least within the short term, to 5,000 megawatts. Because you cannot attract industry if you do not have energy available and at the right price. So that's one area where we struck some agreements on the geothermal, coal, and gas side to see how we can work together to boost the amount of energy available in the Kenyan market. Another area, of course, is the railway line, where we have been talking for a very long time, all of us acknowledging the need to have an efficient railway system, because an efficient railway system not only helps us reduce the cost of doing business, but it also helps us open up the markets. This has been discussions that we have had for a long time. So this is another area where we're very keen to see ourselves move forward, and that was another area where we signed some cooperation and collaboration agreements. We also signed agreements to support us in our efforts to conserve our wildlife, because again, that is a heritage that belongs to Kenya, but it is also common to all of mankind. And again, we had very good discussions and deliberations in that particular area. We also discussed and focused our attention on security, the need to fight terrorism, the need to ensure that we deal with piracy and other menaces that are an interference to prosperity and trade. So those are other areas that we had good and solid discussions. On top of that, you know, we did discuss. They gave us some grants to support areas where we shall mutually agree, interest-free loans to support areas that we shall mutually agree. So overall, I think we have gone back with a hefty package that, if we focus ourselves, can really help us in the process of transforming our society and bringing prosperity to our people.
Now, here in Kenya, thousands of tourists have flocked the Masai Mara in recent weeks for the Great Migration. They've gone home with some wonderful memories, but many left something unpleasant and dangerous behind. This report from CCTV's Maria Galang.
One of the most beautiful landscapes in the world, and the venue for one of the greatest spectacles. But in recent days, the spotlight has moved from the animals to something far less impressive. These pictures were taken just meters from the Mara River. Not only is the litter an eyesore, it's damaging to the environment and dangerous to the animals. And the pictures have surprised and angered Kenyans. So, where do you think these pictures were taken?
Maybe on the road.
In Nairobi?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes, in Nairobi.
What if I told you these were taken in Masai Mara?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Yes.
Why?
No, because Masai Mara, they have special place to dump the rubbish.
But actually, these pictures were taken in the Mara. How does that make you feel? That tourists came and littered in the Mara?
No, this is not good. This is not good at all.
So bad it isn't. Okay, it's unethical.
Wildlife experts say litter is a persistent headache.
The problem in Masai Mara has been there for some time, and the problem is arising as a result of people visiting the reserve and not taking due diligence to be observing the reserve rules and regulations. There are clear regulations that say do not overspeed in the reserve, do not harass animals, do not do off-road driving, and do not litter in the park, in the reserve.
Anyone caught littering can be fined on the spot, around $114 US.
But I presume ignorance to the reserve rules and the regulations is no excuse, because at the gate you are always given pamphlets and documents showing you the park rules and regulations.
The local government body responsible for the region plans to ensure rangers are more rigid in fining people who litter. But it essentially comes down to visitors respecting the rules of the Mara, so this spectacle can be enjoyed for years to come. Maria Galang, CCTV, Nairobi.
You're watching Africa Live. We are taking a short break, but we'll be back with plenty more. Stay tuned.
And I think Nelson Mandela forced us to really examine what these issues are: forgiveness, equality, justice, freedom. Are we free? Are we not? What does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to embrace your enemy? What does it mean to say to your enemy, I forgive you? What does it mean to say, I reconcile with you?
Welcome back. The UN Security Council on Friday urged Sudan not to shut down all pipelines that are the sole conduit for crude exports from South Sudan, which relies heavily on oil revenues for its economy. In a statement, the Council also called for the two governments to maintain dialogue in solving the crisis. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir announced in May that the pipeline would be closed unless the government in Juba stopped supporting rebels active in Sudan. Juba has repeatedly denied providing any support. report. Sudan announced earlier this month that it had delayed the shutdown until September 6 to allow an African Union team to continue investigating the complaints. More than 18,000 people with over 1,000 households have been affected and others displaced from their homes by devastating floods that covered the Maiwut County in South Sudan in recent days. According to county authorities, people are suffering and lacking essentials. Authorities have urged the South Sudanese government and humanitarian organizations to step in and provide assistance immediately to avoid an escalation of malnutrition and diseases. The floods have been the worst witnessed in 2 decades, and people fear more rains from across the neighboring Ethiopian highlands.
We came here because of water. Water destroyed our home. This is why we came here to this dry place. We lost our property. Everything we have has been destroyed by water. We need food and shelter.
To Uganda now, and a tale of fledgling talent from the heart of Kampala. Children as young as 6 are being taught to play classical instruments. Now, Uganda has launched its first youth orchestra. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria has more details.
A classical sound, but for Uganda this is something definitely new. And some of the children here are just getting started. 14-year-old Matthew Kutesa picked up his first violin only last year.
I wanted to do violin since grade 7. I saw it was a beautiful instrument. I like the way you can play jazz, you can play pop, classic, basically all ranges of music on it. So I decided to do violin.
Kutesa is part of Uganda's first youth orchestra. The violin's not the biggest instrument here, but to him it's the sweetest.
I like the sounds it makes, and I just wanted to be able to enjoy that as well. How high it can go, how low it can go. To me, the violin evokes the emotion out of people. Yeah, if I want to musically evoke emotion out of people, the violin is the one, yeah.
In Uganda, very few musicians play in orchestras, but not many watch their performances. But the Kampala Music School wants to change this.
Orchestra has been alive since the early 16th century, but in Uganda it's still growing. Playing instruments like these, trainers say, will go a long way in deepening the various musical cultures, especially in young children.
Instructor of the school, Nicholas Chiveru, says many children are showing an interest.
We're trying our level best to make sure that Ugandans really love the instruments, they love the music, through going to schools like nurseries, like primaries. Then from there, automatically the students really enjoy and they love the music.
The children are introduced to a wide range of instruments. They are hoping their music will find a growing audience. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
And that's it for now on Africa Live. Remember, you can stay in touch with Africa Live on Twitter using the handle CCTV News Africa, and you can also visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa. I'm Penina Karibe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you at 1700 GMT.